Welcome back, my friends, to this Unit 4, Lesson 5 on Energy, Transport, Education, and Health. So far, we have discussed 4 lessons under Unit 4. In this particular lesson, we'll talk more about social infrastructure and we'll see what social infrastructure means, which is nothing but when we will discuss energy, transport, education, health, all these come under social infrastructure. And then finally, we'll discuss about the new infrastructure pipeline projects, a new initiative by the Government of India. Let us start with what is social infrastructure. When we say social infrastructure, we mean to create that environment, to have those factors which render the human resources of our country suitable for productive work. So whether it is energy, transport, education, health, so that's what comes under that infrastructure, which we call as social infrastructure. As you know, India is very different in terms of how labor laws are regulated in our country from one state to the other, how citizens are educated at different levels, how the health of the citizens is handled in our country. So we need to have, as I said earlier, inclusive growth in our last lesson. So the good thing is that IT is trying to help develop this social infrastructure in our country at a very fast pace. So when we say social infrastructure, it is the healthcare, the education, training and skill development, energy or the smart cities as we call today the emerging infrastructure trend, citizen services, small and medium businesses, SMBs, financial inclusion, and transportation. So let us take one by one. So there has been a rapid expansion in the Indian infrastructure. We have been exploiting the potential of the waterways, which we call as the blue economy, in terms of fishing, in terms of a lot of other things that we are doing around our ports and using those ports to contribute more value to the GDP. Another thing that we have done when we talk about the projections for 2025, the power is going to be double. The highways would be 1.5 times bigger and will have metro size increasing by 6 times. So the models that have been successful, which we have been using, are TOT and HAM. So TOT is the toll operate transfer model. So where you take the toll tax, you operate, and then later on, once the cost that you have incurred on building that particular project, once you have reached the break even with your minimum profit, you can transfer that to the government. The second is hybrid annuity model, which has been very successful, which has 40% component of EPC, which is engineering, procurement, and construction. That is when the project is getting ready. So that is the participation of the private parties, and 60% is BOT, which they can contribute in terms of the investment, which is build, own, and transfer, as I discussed earlier in terms of TOT. If you look at this figure, so as I said, by 2025 power will double. So that is what the power from 2005 to 2025 is going to be doubling. So if you look at transport, which is the green one, again it is going to be 1.5 times. And similarly, when you look at irrigation, so that is also going to go up, which will help our agriculture sector. The storage and distribution, which you are seeing over here, will be going up, but not drastically. So when we look at the global scenario and where India stands, we see that the private investment in India is still low. And as a result, India in 2019 came up with this plan that it is going to spend around 1.4 trillion US dollars on infrastructure during this 4 year period from 2019 to 23. But as otherwise, India is at 81st rank in terms of the quality of overall infrastructure. 2.4% is the private investment in infrastructure of the GDP. So as I said, which is low, which needs to be enhanced under different models which we discussed. Population with no access to improved sanitation, 65% of the population. And there is 25% of the population with no access to electricity even today. So India needs to spend around 7 to 8% of its GDP on infrastructure every year, which comes out to be around 200 billion, whereas India has only been able to spend around half of it, around 100 billion. So there is a deficit of 50%. With the new initiatives, which we are going to talk a little bit towards the end, is new infrastructure pipeline projects, so which is National Infra Pipeline. A report has been submitted, and by 2025 we are going to implement the projects. So as I said, 100 billion if you are spending, here we are talking about 44 lakh crore are under implementation, the projects, and 33 lakh crore are in the planning stage, and 22 lakh crore have been developed so far. So let us take each sector individually. Energy. As you know, India has around 18% of the world's population which live in India, and that population uses just 6% of the world's primary energy. So the government of India has come out with a plan that it is going to spend around $750 billion in the coming decade. When we talk about the traditional areas of infrastructure which we had been developing, so these are roads, ports, and power. So it is the energy, the roads, and the ports. But the new emerging sectors which have come up where the budget is going or spending is going, so these are railways, including internal railways like metros, urban infrastructure, and renewable energy. If we look at energy, so in terms of power, so India has become now power surplus. Most of the states, so they were power deficit, but now they are power surplus, which is a very big thing for a country like India. If we talk about oil and gas, so still India is very much dependent on imports, and India is trying to reduce the imports as we had been talking, especially for crude imports. It is going to reduce it by 10%. That's the agenda. And also the digital innovation and transformation will also be able to help the oil exploration and gas exploration in our country. In terms of renewable energy, so India would like to increase the renewable energy capacity to 175 gigawatts by 2025 and 275 gigawatts by 2027. India has also taken a pledge that the emissions intensity will be reduced to 33 to 35% by 2030 from the 2005 level of emissions. There are two mega trends. One is India feels that the efficiency in terms of energy generation and distribution would be an important step for affordable sustainability. And second is India is planning to shift to 100% of the car sales to electric vehicles by 2030. When we talk of transport, so India has recently come up with a 10 lakh crore national transport master plan, which is having an approach of multimodal transport hubs. What that means is, since you have the surface transport, that is the roads, the water transport, and the air transport. So, and we may say, when we say surface transport, these are roads and also the railways. Metros, mini railways or metros are used for the traffic within the cities. So this particular plan, which is going to come, is going to do with the multimodal transport hubs, that is interconnectivity between the three modes of transport and the three surfaces: water, air, and roads. So when we say the infrastructure vision for transport, so first is logistically, they would like to connect by road all the areas in our country, and by creating economic corridors and identifying few of the strategic areas, and they would like to integrate that with other means of transport, whether it is railways or by air or by water. So that is in terms of logistics. Then when we talk about air connectivity, the tier 2 cities will be all connected, and many from tier 3 cities also will be part of that vision. The port-led development, that means the ports have to be developed and bring them to the international levels. So that will help us to cut the logistic cost and create new jobs, because logistic cost is very high, transportation cost is very high for the products and services if the connectivity is poor. So the metro connectivity is also going to be in at least 25 cities for commuting of the local residents there. When we talk about the evolution of roads in India, just imagine in 1954 we had just around 3,53,000 kilometers of roads in total, and whereas in 2016 this number has gone to around 52 lakhs in terms of the roads. If you look at the district and rural roads, so we have a lot of kilometers of roads built in those rural areas for connectivity. If we talk of surface transport, especially the buses or the local transport within the cities, so at present the urban population is increasing, and by 2030 the forecast is around 40% of rural population, of urban population will be there. So it is increasing at a good pace. So if we talk of India GDP per capita, it is increasing. So it is now around 1,263 US dollars. So it started from 1,000, so it is progressing. So we will be having in our country the four approaches to smart transportation. Number one is your smart automobiles, then the smart infrastructure, and the third is intelligent transport systems that we use, and we want sustainable fuel with very or no emissions. And if you look at the light vehicle production, so very soon you will be into hybrid mode, and also the electric vehicles. If we talk of health, like India spends only 1.29% of GDP on public health, whereas if you look at countries like US, which is 14.3, Germany 9.5, UK 7.5. If you look at China, even there it's low, but it is 2.9. So India lacks in terms of the health infrastructure in our country. India has just 7 beds per 10,000 people, whereas the global median is 27. Similarly, when we talk about other countries in terms of hospital beds per 10,000 people, in Russia it is 98 against India, which is 7, China 38, Brazil 18. So 70% of our healthcare infrastructure in India is limited or is for the urban areas. So if I look at number of beds in the rural areas, it is even less than 5. And also the average of rural Vietnam, Thailand, China, if we look in terms of the number of beds, there are 27 per 10,000. Mind you, that is in the rural areas. In terms of the doctors, India doesn't even meet minimum WHO standard. We have one doctor prescribed by WHO for 1,000 people, and India has 0.7, not one doctor per 1,000 people. If you look at Russia, 3.3 doctors, China 1.5. So one is the norm given by World Health Organization. What are the reasons? What is the main reason? So India's GDP spend is very low. So it needs to be around 6% if we want a good healthcare system for all. When we look at education, so we had two good things which we have done. One, Education for All, that is Right to Education Act in 2009. And second is the Gender Parity Index, which we have started creating, which is Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao, which also comes under that. So unfortunately, our spending on education has gone down since 2014. And if you look at as percentage of GDP, it is around 0.45, so it's not much. If we look at the stats, the figures of Indian education infrastructure, so we have around 1.5 million schools, out of which 1.1 are from the government side and 0.4 million from the private side. Number of students, 264 million. This number may go up or down. We'll see that later on. And annual intake is around 18 million. So the people who enter the education system for the first time, maybe the schools. And additional requirement is 40,000 schools. So we are deficient in terms of the number of schools. And more capacity required is 40 million. And any other requirement of teachers, so it is saying 2, but I can always change. And additional resources, 60 billion we require in order to have these extra schools, the teachers, and so on. In terms of colleges, 35.539, universities 700. So like this, when you go down, you find all the things here. In terms of the vocational training centers, so around 22,000, and we need 1 million. And plus we need some additional resources, which is to the tune of 40 billion. So India has come up with a National Education Policy 2020, which has come this year only. So this has been announced, and it is aiming to increase the investment level of 6% of GDP. And Ministry of Human Resource Development has now named as the Ministry of Education. And also the right to education until class 12 age of 18 years. So it has been extended up to class 12th. 50% gross enrollment ratio is what the Prime Minister is looking at by 2035. So if we talk of the social infrastructure of India, we have come up with a national infrastructure pipeline, so under which the projects have to be implemented till the financial year 2025, where the allocation is like this: energy is 24%, and roads 18%, urban 17%, and railways 12%. So like the smart cities and others which you see, they come under the urban national infrastructure pipeline projects. So in this, what the government has decided that it will be public-private partnership. So the center will be investing to the tune of 39%, states also 39%, private sector 22%. So the funds which have been allocated or planned for energy is 25 lakh crores, which is the highest. Then roads 20 lakh crores. Then comes irrigation around 16 lakh crores, and mobility in terms of within the city or in the closest vicinity of the cities and towns, around 16 lakh crores, railways 14 lakh crores, digital infrastructure 3.2 lakh crores, and port and airport is 2.5. So this is what the Government of India has come out with in order to mitigate all the bottlenecks that we had been discussing. So let me summarize the things for you. We discussed about the social infrastructure, then we took all the four key sectors: energy, transport, education and health, and looked at the infrastructure status in India. And then we talked about national infrastructure pipeline projects. Here is a small quiz. Kindly answer these. So, what is BOT stands for? What are the emerging sectors for infrastructure development? Question number 3. How much India spends on health in percentage GDP? BOT is nothing, you can compare the answers here. BOT is nothing but build, own, transfer. Emerging sectors for infrastructure development are urban infrastructure, renewable energy and railways. How much India spends on health in GDP is 1.29%. So that is all from my side. If you have any questions, feel free to ask or write to me at any point of time. So this is for further reading. If you are interested in understanding the national infrastructure pipeline projects in more detail, then this is a good blog by Government of India. So that is all from my side. See you next time with the next lesson. Enjoy your time and goodbye for now. Shabba khair.